play and different ways to approach what is going to be a very exciting matchup. And you know, we're just starting right off the bat with that Calyrex and Shadow Rider and Solgaleo.
Yeah, and on the other side of things as well for Jourdan, we have the Kyogre as well as the Ferrothorn. And I mean, talk me through this, Gabby. I mean, based on speed tier alone, when you're taking a look at how quick these Pokemon are able to make their moves, what are you kind of thinking?
Well, Calyrex Shadow Rider is one of the fastest Pokemon in the metagame, so I think that is probably the Pokemon that's going to go first, unless that Kyogre is holding a Choice Scarf, which will become very apparent very quickly. I think that if you're in Zac's shoes here, you have the option to go for a pretty common combination here. You go for the Dynamax onto the Solgaleo, and then if you have Bulldoze on that Calyrex Shadow Rider, not only do you get to drop the speed of all the other Pokemon on the field, you also get to activate your own weakness policy. We saw Aaron Cybertron Zang earlier actually use a similar strategy with a Choice Scarf Groudon.
Yep.
And it looks like that Zac might be taking a page off of that book as we see that Dynamax come through.
Ooh, Dynamax Solgaleo for Zac, but a Dynamax as well being answered here by Jourdan. It is going to be the Kyogre, and this is a really interesting spot to see this in because for the most part, well, I guess there's two different ways to play with Kyogre, right? Typically, you want it to be able to do the spread damage with Water Spout, but in some cases like this, where it might not get the chance to do that, then you have the ability to go for single target, very, very powerful water type attacks in the rain. But here is that Bulldoze, very quick on its feet from that Shadow Rider Calyrex, dropping the speed of everyone's but Solgaleo's. So Solgaleo gets to quickly fire off a Max Quake right into that Ferrothorn.
The Ferrothorn targeting is interesting as well, just because it's going to boost the special defense of both the Pokemon on Zac's side of the field, which will help it take attacks from this Kyogre. But, you know, Ferrothorn is one of those Pokemon that knows to slow things down a lot. And if you're looking at a bulky Pokemon like Solgaleo, it's possible that Jordan's trying to set that up already with the Leech Seed turn 1.
Yeah, this is a very supportive, slow style of play coming out from our Ferrothorn friend. And you're going to see that some of that health is going to be restored from that Leech Seed. And this is where things get a little tough, or maybe a little telegraphed. It depends on the situation. But you've got Protect that you can cycle through now, as well as firing off a couple more Leech Seeds.
Exactly. And, you know, it's super interesting to see Ferrothorn having done so well this far in the tournament, just seeing how many Fire-type Pokemon have been going around. Typically, when you have a Pokemon like this, even if you do bring Kyogre as your partner, you save Ferrothorn for the end of the game once the things that can counter it are gone. But because it looks like Zac just doesn't have anything that can hit it super hard and take it down in one hit, it's just going to be happy to stick around and take advantage of that Leech Seed for a few more turns.
Yeah, with Kyogre Dynamaxed, even though it does take the critical hit here, it does have that survival with that increased HP, but the Max Mind Storm coming in from the Solgaleo. Okay, maybe that crit mattered.
It's hard to say. I mean, not a lot of Solgaleo right now are carrying Max Mindstorm, usually coming off of a Zen Headbutt. It's a great move to have. You know, getting the Psychic Terrain on the field does mean that you don't have to worry about priority attacks, like a possible Fake Out or maybe some shenanigans from the Grimmsnarl that Jourdan possibly has in the back of his party. But it also means that, you know, you can't necessarily have like a coverage move, or you can't necessarily have something to stop Trick Room. I guess it could also be maybe like a Psych Fangs or something if you're worried about screens, but I don't think we're going to see that play out right now, as that Zacian, you know, will have the Intrepid Sword boost still, but it's going to be slower than both this Calyrex, and another Bulldoze would possibly mean it's going to be slower than the Solgaleo as well. So Zac just has a lot of options going into this turn, whereas Jourdan needs to find a way to either remove the Solgaleo from the field this turn or start working on that Calyrex, as both are going to just keep applying so much pressure onto the field, especially when they're side by side.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the Solgaleo has the weakness policy activated as well, I mean, there aren't too many Pokemon right now on Jourdan's side that I feel like are really going to be able to withstand hits from this Solgaleo, but let's look at this next turn. Calyrex is just going to go ahead and dish out more damage here, not even worried about the speed of the Pokemon on the other side, being able to deal damage to both the Zacian and the Ferrothorn, but Substitute now coming into play, but I feel like this is just delaying the inevitable in some ways, as Solgaleo goes for a Max Quake. Will be able to knock out that Ferrothorn, but is the Zacian going to be able to get something done behind that sub?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think Zac's priorities were correct in targeting the Ferrothorn first, just because if it were allowed to get a second Leech Seed up, if it were allowed to just sit on the field for long enough, that's a lot of people's end games in other formats. And unfortunately, just not working out here because Zac was able to come with the offensive immediately off the bat. I think that the Zacian behind the sub will give it the ability to get one attack in. But, looking at the Calyrex and the Solgaleo, it's possible that like a Sacred Sword would do enough damage to remove the Solgaleo, but then Calyrex's Astral Barrage will likely break the Substitute, and, you're still in a bit of a tough spot. I think I would have liked to see that Zacian try and just use the turn to attack, just to try and get some damage down onto the field and even things up a little bit so that, this Incineroar and the Zacian together can try and find an end game against what I can only assume is probably the Landorus Therian in the back of Zac's party. It's tough to say.
Yeah, we still haven't seen Pokemon 3 or 4 come out from Zac. It's just been the Solgaleo Shadow Rider Calyrex show. And a huge reveal here from the Shadow Rider Calyrex. No way, that was a Pollen Puff, and now that Solgaleo is going to be even harder to knock out here, as Throat Chop is going to bring that Shadow Rider Calyrex down to its Focus Sash.
Some great information for Jourdan going into Game 2. Not only revealing the Focus Sash on the Calyrex Shadow Rider, I think that'll really show or change how he approaches this matchup in Game 2, but also that Pollen Puff reveal, knowing that as long as Calyrex Shadow Rider is on the field, there is that potential for the healing of its partner, and just taking advantage of that Protect from the Zacian perfectly there. I think that's something that you really have to respect going into Game 2, and even though you're not going to be fast enough to stop that Calyrex Shadow Rider from using Bulldoze that turn 1, I think that you do have to target it maybe a little bit more aggressively so it can't just heal Solgaleo up after you spent so many turns trying to get all that damage down.
I absolutely agree with that. We're going to see the Shadow Rider Calyrex use Astral Barrage once more. Will connect with the Substitute from Zacian and will cause it to fade, as well as deal some damage to that Incineroar as well. As Zacian is going to be able to use the Sacred Sword there, but it's not enough, even with a crit, to be able to take it out. As Earthquake, that Calyrex is at 1 HP. It can be collateral damage here, as this does secure a double knockout for Zac and the win for game number 1.
Taking one for the team there. I respect that. But yeah, no, I mean, again, that's some really great information overall for Jourdan going into Game 2.
Exist on Zac's team that might pose a bit of a problem to that, but let's see if there are any adjustments, and doesn't look like there are too many, except that there is a Grimmsnarl on the field now for Zac.
The Grimmsnarl could certainly change things up a little bit for Zac. Might not be able to proc the weakness policy as quickly as that Calyrex Shadow was in the previous game, but it's also possible that by mixing things up like this, maybe Zac isn't trying to go for the turn 1 Dynamax. Maybe Or maybe you're going for the turn 1 Dynamax with Solgaleo because you want the bulk and you want to be able to boost your special defense, especially against a Pokemon like Kyogre, but you're just okay not having that weakness policy activate. You know, you are forcing your opponent to play around it, and just seeing how bulky Solgaleo was in Game 1, I don't think he necessarily has to be too concerned about these two Pokemon together on Jourdan's side of the field. The only time that I think it would start to become worrisome would be if the Ferrothorn is able to connect the Leech Seed, stay on the field, and just like 10 turns down the line to still be a presence. But I think the Solgaleo should be able to take care of that. But I don't think it's actually going for the Dynamax yet this turn.
It does not appear to be doing so. It looks like Solgaleo is going to protect and just try to bide out some time before we are able to set up the screens here from this Grimmsnarl. Max Geyser now coming out from the Kyogre. It is going to connect with the Solgaleo through the Protect. That still does a massive amount of damage. even through that. And the Ferrothorn as well, going for the Leech Seed, but the Protect does stop that.
It does, and I think that's a good, we saw the Life Orb reveal on that Kyogre as well, so that's just good information for both these trainers. And now that Zac has that information, I think he can sort of plan out his game plan. You know, knowing that Solgaleo took so much damage without the Dynamax already, maybe you just keep it a slower, a couple more turns. Maybe you go for that Max Mindstorm again to get Psychic Terrain up. He certainly does have options, but I think keeping Solgaleo safe for now and having it come back possibly once Kyogre's Dynamax is over is the best play. And Tapu Fini is the perfect Pokemon to switch in because it does have a lot of that natural special bulk.
It absolutely does. And if you're, you know, we saw the Combine variant running around for a long time as well, so there are ways to further increase that special defense. And plus, you're water type. You're faring a little bit better against these Max Geysers coming in from the Kyogre, but also what a great opportunity to be able to take that damage and also be able to lower the special attack output with that Spirit Break.
Exactly, and we do see the first Leech Seed connect onto that Tapu Fini this turn, but you know, Ferrothorn is still full health, still able to protect this turn, but overall, just a bit of a slower start. You know, I'm surprised to see that Tapu Fini still took so much damage from that Kyogre, even through the light screen, even through those type resistances. It makes you wonder, like, if Tapu Fini is just going to, you know, be on the field for this last turn of Kyogre's Dynamax and then get knocked out and then have that Solgaleo come back in once the Kyogre's back down to a more reasonable size. I don't think Tapu Fini necessarily would have changed the matchup too much in Game 1, so it's possible Zac just feels comfortable using it to act as a third Protect, if you will, and give Solgaleo some breathing room.
Ooh. Well, the Max Geyser this time goes into the Grimmsnarl as Tapu Fini firing off a Dazzling Gleam. Not going to be super effective onto the Ferrothorn, but the critical hit is nice as the Spirit Break is going to deal some additional damage to that Kyogre and again drop its special attack.
I would be very surprised if we see Kyogre stick around on the field once its Dynamax is done, knowing that it is at -2. That's a huge penalty to take, and you can't even really rely on Water Spout anymore to just power your way through that, as it has taken a lot of damage. But it's great to see that the Grimmsnarl, it's unfortunate it got knocked out, but this does open up the opportunity for Solgaleo to come right back out onto the field. And I'm also interested to see what this Tapu Fini is going to continue doing, because that Dazzling Gleam did seem a bit more powerful than I expected it to be. It's always hard to say for sure, but you know, Tapu Fini is typically known to be more of a supportive Pokemon. Maybe Scald, Dazzling Gleam, some sort of supportive move, and Protect is what a lot of people ran on it in other formats. Whether or not that's what people are running in Series 12 is yet to be seen.
Maybe we'll get a bit more information as we continue through this game number 2, as Shadow Rider Calyrex is now taking the field for Zac. And does the Kyogre switch out? I really want to know the answer to that question, Gabby.
I mean, if the Kyogre doesn't switch out, then I think Astral Barrage will seal the knockout on that Kyogre and give that Calyrex Shadow Rider a boost thanks to its Grimnay ability. So that could possibly start things rolling for Zac's Pokemon, and that's something that Jourdan has to be very careful of. But given the switch here, it's possible that we're seeing Zac try and activate that weakness policy this turn so he can go immediately for the Dynamax the next turn.
It's going to be an Astral Barrage here, so really nice Protect coming in from Jourdan, as the Kyogre is at least going to not take that damage. The Ferrothorn does take quite a bit, but is able to activate a second Leech Seed here. And I think that's going to be pretty important moving into what could be Zac's time to Dynamax in this next turn.
Exactly. I mean, thanks to the damage that Leech Seed does in between turns, that Focus Sash is no longer activated on the Shadow Calyrex, which means that Kyogre, if given the opportunity to attack, which is a big if right now, could easily knock it out with one of any number of water-type moves that it might have. So I'm very interested to see what the prioritization is from Zac. On the one hand, going for the Astral Barrage to get your +1 in special attack is a very solid play. You also get more damage down onto the Ferrothorn, and it's possible that that plus a Dynamax attack from the Solgaleo, even without the weakness policy, will do enough damage. If you go for Bulldoze, on the other hand, you're in a situation where you're probably still going to get the knockout on the Throthorn, but that Kyogre will have the opportunity to attack. That's not going to be a knockout move.
Yeah, no, that was a very, very safe switch, though, coming in from Zac, just to be able to bring in the Solgaleo. You know, you're a little worried, but, you know, what knows? Who knows? Who knows what the Solgaleo is actually, or the Kyogre has as the rest of its moveset. And whether or not that Solgaleo was threatened at all. Because we know it wasn't by a water spout.
No,
so
not at this point with so much damage done.
But here comes the weakness policy activation plus the speed drops from the Bulldoze, as we do see that Solgaleo target down that Kyogre with that Max Quake will be enough to get the knockout. But also, the special defense boosts are going to feel pretty good to keep this duo safe right now.
Yeah, there's only so much this Throthorn can do, and Gyro Ball just is not going to be enough damage to remove that Shadow Calyrex. So, again, we're in a situation where the Kyogre has been removed. You know, we do still... Jordan still does have 2 Pokemon in the back, and if the Zacian can come out to play on the field right now, that's probably his best chance of keeping that momentum going.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's also what you're going to have to rely on as well. So sure, the special defense boosts don't necessarily deal with something that is more physically focused like this Zacian, but at least you know that there is a Max Quake that could threaten this particular Pokemon. And if you get it to a specific HP threshold, Zacian also can't sit behind a substitute anymore.
No, and the Calyrex is also still around for one more turn, which means it could just go for another Bulldoze to give that Solgaleo the speed advantage again. You know, Zac has done a very good job of keeping these 2 Pokemon safe and sort of mitigating the threat of Jordan's Dynamax without necessarily sitting in front of that Kyogre with these Pokemon for 3 turns.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just curious on how, you know, Zac still has to deal with the Ferrothorn, obviously, but Astral Barrage is going to help out with that, as we have seen from turns previous, how much damage this move is able to do. Zacian protecting itself, though, from this damage, but is it going to... Is the Ferrothorn safe? Max Quake does come through from the Solgaleo. It targets down the Ferrothorn, and it does knock it out. So that Zacian protected, but Zac got a great read.
Exactly. I think going from game 1 into game 2, the Zacian went for the substitute, then the protect. You know, those were a very passive couple of turns. I think you just assume that your opponent's going to take that strategy a second time around, and you know that the Throthorn benefits from that, so you just target it down immediately.
But you also saw as well how little damage that Zacian was able to do. Like, it wasn't able to knock out the Solgaleo anyway, even when it used Sacred Sword. So that's also good information for Zac to take and just say, well, you might not be able to knock out my Solgaleo anyway, and because of how quick my Calyrex is, it's more important that I focus down the Ferrothorn than it is for you to focus down my Solgaleo at this given moment.
Yeah.
Pollen Puff also still exists.
Yeah, and Calyrex could go for one more Pollen Puff here. You know, it doesn't have to worry about being flinched by Fake Out, as it is a Ghost-type Pokemon. So there's so many opportunities for Zac. He's in a very, very strong position going into the latter turns of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see how this is going to play out as we are nearing the end. Bulldoze connects on all 3 Pokemon, dropping Incineroar and Zacian's speed, but Solgaleo continues to remain unaffected thanks to its full metal body ability, making it the fastest Pokemon on the field to go next as Zacian gets knocked out here, and you had to go for that. Absolutely.
You do. Like, even if you were somehow not faster than the Zacian at this point in time, you still have your Dynamax up. You're going to resist the Behemoth Blade, so you don't have to worry about that getting the full knockout there. And just the benefits of taking the Zacian out, it means that you have a Solgaleo and a Tapu Fini against a Incineroar. We know that Solgaleo's Earthquake will certainly knock out that Incineroar at this point in time. That is a perfectly comfortable win position to have. And then you have Tapu Fini with presumably Muddy Water or Scald as well to sort of support that.
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely a great endgame position for Zac to be in. And, you know, maybe this Incineroar could potentially secure a knockout.
I mean,
maybe you get lucky and maybe a move that you select misses, but it does seem about wrapped up at this point for Zac.
Yeah, the benefit of going for Earthquake here is you probably take out your own Tapu Fini, but you're guaranteed to connect the attack onto the opponent. It looks like instead we're seeing Sunsteel Strike, which will be resisted, but still with that weakness policy boost and an attack from Tapu Fini, I think that's enough.
Yeah, Tapu Fini gonna go for the Scald here. Great play from both of these trainers, but it is Zac that comes out on top in a 2-0 for this round 8 of Swiss here at the Regional Championships.
What a great way to lock yourself into Top Cut tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Just a very decisive win from Zac.